We've got to be serious about tackling these problems in an organized and systemic fashion. I want you to understand that that's why I'm running for governor. Because I actually believe that Connecticut's best days could be ahead of it as opposed to behind it. I'm not running to be the captain of the Titanic. I'm running to launch a new ship. A new ship which is designed in a model that is far more competitive with the other 50 states, that is willing to take on its problems and lead New England, the Mid-Atlantic, and ultimately the nation in a recovery. Now, we saw some great statistics, interesting statistics about our strength. And I want to comment about the magazine. There is a very interesting article in this magazine today about the role of the unemployed. And points out that Fairfield County, and specifically the Stamford Bridgeport market, leads the state with self-employment. One of the differences between our economy and a much larger manufacturing economy in the rest of the state. It's important information like that that has to lead us in the direction of developing strong and good public policy. So let's talk about what some of that policy should consist of. Number one, this is not the time to back away from our commitment to public education. It's one of the reasons I believe that over the next number of years, 4 to 8 years, we need to move in the direction of universal pre-kindergarten learning experiences. After all, in the United States, we have a 33-year-old standard. The standard stated that every child would come to kindergarten in the United States ready to learn. And yet, in most of our urban areas other than Stamford, very large and significant portions of that population arrive in kindergarten never having had a formalized educative process. We need to change that if we're going to change the rates of graduation in communities like Bridgeport, New Haven, Hartford, Waterbury, New Britain, and New London. Secondly, this is the second September in a row that we have started school with substantially fewer teachers than we did the year before. It's a destructive trend. It's particularly destructive in the urban communities, which I just mentioned, who were just starting to make some progress with respect to progress in school testing. I would also tell you that we need to take a very different tact with respect to college and educational and vocational programs. For instance, one of the most disturbing statistics that I'd like to share with you is North Carolina, a state that's been taking our jobs for a generation, spends $81 per capita on community colleges and vocational training programs. We sit here in a state that spends $34 per capita. The difference is amazing. Now, take that statistic and play it against the following fact, that Connecticut has the most rapidly aging workforce in America. If we don't properly prepare the next workforce, we will continue on this 22-year slide of being dead last in job creation and job retention. I'm prepared to tackle that problem and make sure that we're making the appropriate investments in the next workforce so that we can continue to be attractive to companies that will, in fact, move here. And that we also need to do other things to prepare that workforce to be ready. For instance, affordable housing or good transportation systems that allow people to move across the state from community to community for the purposes of employment. Or again, lowering electric costs. On the higher education side, we need a much more nimble and entrepreneurial higher educational system. We need innovations like the Yukon campus, which has had such an extraordinary impact in Stamford over the last 10 years. But we need this institution and all of our institutions of higher learning to be more entrepreneurial, to be able to move into new fields much more rapidly. In the wake of the 9/11 attacks in New York, it took our State Department of Higher Education 18 months to approve new degrees in security, security regulation, and related fields. After all, what those institutions did was to go to other universities in America that had those degrees, copy those curriculums, and bring those curriculums to Connecticut. But our state government could not move rapidly enough to allow our state to join the pipeline of people which were needed to secure the United States. I'll give you another way about, just because it came into my mind, I was talking to some of the United Technologies folks about the regulation of state government. The absence of an understanding on state government that time is money is astounding. They needed a new paint booth up at the Stratford facility where they build those great world-class helicopters for our military. It took them 186 days to get a new paint booth permitted at that facility. And as was pointed out to me by this person from United Technologies, if they wanted to do the same paint booth in Georgia, where they have a plant building helicopters, it would have taken them no more than 30 days. We need to reshape state government so that it understands something that everyone in this room understands. Time is money. Now, I also want to be very clear that I think we have an obligation to build infrastructure. And if you study the economic recoveries since the Second World War, you will understand that infrastructure, and construction specifically, has been a leading factor in our nation's working its way out of recessions. Unfortunately, in Connecticut, we live in a state that ranks dead last for its personal contribution, that is, state government's contribution to the transportation expenditures. Every other state puts more of its own money into the game than the state of Connecticut. It's one of the reasons that you and I live with 95, and by the way, I travel it pretty frequently running around this state. And understand that a road system that was designed 55, 60 years ago fails to meet the needs of our state at this time. Let me examine for 1 minute the biggest project, which has been used as explanation why we can't spend money lower in Fairfield County, the 95-91 interchange and bridge replacement in New Haven. And it's frequently quoted to us as this is a $2.2 billion project. But understand that that $2.2 billion is actually spread over 17 years. The unwillingness of this state to invest in the kind of infrastructure necessary for us to be competitive with other states is astounding. And we need to change that. It's one of the reasons I disagreed with the governor's first attempts to deal with the recession as it became evident in 2007. The first thing the governor did was to cancel $600 million in capital projects. Now, I now understand what she was doing. She was setting the table for not having to make really hard decisions and helping the legislature not have to do that. Because if you canceled infrastructure investment and didn't need to go to Wall Street to borrow the money to build the kind of infrastructure that would allow us to compete, what it ultimately allowed the legislature and the governor to do was to go to Wall Street and borrow obscene amounts of money to cover our operating expenses. Again, because we didn't have gap finance rules in place that would have prevented, as a matter of law, our state doing that kind of thing. So what we really need in this state is proven leadership. Somebody who's prepared to change the place in which they live. Someone who's prepared to make the place in which they live a stronger, a safer, a better run, a more economic, and a more competitive model. Guess what? You're looking at somebody who did that for 14 years. I'll take my record in Stamford and post it against anybody's with respect to what needs to be done in the state of Connecticut. Now, one final point. This quip about never having to meet a payroll. Let me tell you, I practiced law in Stamford in the late 1980s and early 1990s. You want to know what it's like to struggle to make a payroll? I understood that, and you understand it. And you need a state government that's prepared to be your partner in getting the things done necessary to turn the state around. That's why I'm running, and I'm very happy to be with you.